Hello and welcome to Pastor Well. I'm Hershael York, the Dean of the School of Theology at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also Senior Pastor of the Buck Run Baptist Church in Frankfort. Pastor Well is a podcast dedicated to helping servants of the Lord be faithful in ministry. I especially like to talk to pastors about how they can serve the Lord in the pastoral ministry. The last time I talked about how you deal with people when they disappoint you and how you let them leave well. Today, I want to talk about what happens when you disappoint people. You're not always going to do things right or do things well. You're not always going to pastor well. So what happens when you pastor badly, when people let you know that you messed up, you hurt them, you wounded them? Well, there are several reasons why people can be disappointed in you. The most obvious one is because of what you've done. Pastors can blow it. Pastors can do things badly. Sometimes pastors can take for themselves an authority that's really not theirs. They make decisions unilaterally that wasn't theirs to make. They slay sacred cows that weren't ready to be slain, and people don't like it. You didn't consult with them. You didn't talk to them. Maybe you just ran roughshod over their feelings. So you can do wrong things, and people will let you know because of what you did, you hurt them. Second reason that you can disappoint people is because of what you didn't do. Now, in my own life and ministry, I will tell you this is probably 10 to 1 what I hear. People get disappointed in me more because of what I did not do that they thought I should do instead of that I did something wrong. You know, there's a unique challenge in ministry that our people expect us to be proactive and to realize that something needs to be done and then to do it. You know, no one, if they get into a legal problem, they don't expect their lawyer to just know it and to call them. If someone gets sick, they don't expect their doctor to call them and say, hey, is there something I can do? But man, when people get in an issue, a spiritual issue, a problem, they really expect their pastor to be proactive and to somehow hear about it and show up. You can really disappoint people by not showing up when they think you should, not showing a kindness that they expected you to show or an excitement at something that happened to them. So people get disappointed in you because of what you fail to do. Also, people get disappointed in you because of sometimes you actually fail. You blew it. You made a bad decision. You made a bad call. You said something you should not have said. You got testy. You got angry. You know, I've been pastor at Buck Run for 19 years, and in all that time, I've only had one deacons meeting that had any tension in it. And I'm the guy who brought the tension in the room because I went into the meeting anticipating that, you know, there was a course of action we had to take, and there was really only one way to do it. I'd already thought through every permutation of this thing that I could think through, and I knew I had to make a decision. I knew there were going to be some people who didn't like the decision, and I set myself up to be upset. And sure enough, when I tell them of this decision, and I really want them to just get on board and say, okay, we understand that decision. I had two very godly, wonderful deacons who went, wait just a minute. You're wanting our approval of this decision, but we're just hearing this for the first time. And we really think we ought to have a little bit of time to think about this and pray about this. And man, I had told myself somebody's going to do that. And then when they did it, in my heart, I went, see, I knew they would. And I just sort of came back at them like, you know, I didn't say these words, but let's just say it was the how dare you question me kind of thing, which is a terrible move for a pastor to make. And I made it. I had to apologize to those deacons privately, and then at the next deacons meeting, I apologized to them again in front of all the deacons. I disappointed them. And I would just tell you that when you fail, you need to own it. A church should never be shocked to hear their pastor say, "I'm so sorry." There are people who say, "Well, don't ever expect an apology out of him. He's never going to apologize." I don't want to be that kind of a person. That's just not what a New Testament Christian is. We all fail. We are all broken. And when I legitimately fail to live up to my own standards, let alone someone else's, I want to be quick to apologize and say, "I'm so sorry. I just blew that. Can you forgive me?" And what I have found is people are really happy to forgive you. They just want to know that you did wrong. They're not expecting a perfect pastor, but they do expect their pastor to know when he's messed up and to own it. And if you just simply say, "I'm so sorry, church, can you forgive me?" They'll love you more for it. But if you deny it, if you go into defense mode, you start playing the you-dos. "Yeah, well, you do this, and what you do is worse than what I do," then that's just childish, and it's not going to accomplish anything. You need to be willing to own your mistakes, ask their forgiveness, and say, "Hey, thank you for pointing that out. By God's grace, I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do better." And they'll trust you more. Sometimes people are going to be disappointed in you because of unreasonable expectations. They're going to expect something of you that really that's just not reasonable or right. Let's say they send an anonymous letter. Should you read an anonymous letter? Well, unless you have someone designated to read your mail, you're probably going to. And now people put up spoof email accounts. It's hard not to read them. People find a way to make sure you get them. The question is, when you get one, is there a legitimate gripe here? Is there really a legitimate cause for complaint? You need to consider that. Is there something I need to adjust? Now, you've got nobody to apologize to because you don't know who the person is. But there are ways pastors can signal to his congregation, it's been pointed out to me that I did such and such. Either you can explain to them why I've not explained that well, or you can say, that wasn't a good decision on my part. I'm sorry. And you can still signal you're open without, I would advise you not to mention to your congregation that you got an anonymous letter. I think that empowers the anonymous letter writers. I think that's the moment they're going for. Don't give it to them. Just deal with the issue if it needs to be dealt with. And if it's an unreasonable expectation, they write in that letter, "I don't like the way you hold hands with your wife at church." Well, someone says that to Hershael York. I'm like, that one's going in the trash, and I'm not worried about that. I'm going to hold hands with my wife wherever I want. That's a silly thing. But if they say, "You preach too long," okay, I'm going to ask myself, do I? And look back at the record. How long do I preach? Have I been getting longer? Is this an unreasonable expectation? And we can all defend ourselves and say, "Well, they should be happy to sit there for an hour and 5 minutes." You got to be really, really good to hold people for an hour and 5 minutes. So maybe you do need to cut that back. You don't need to make a big announcement of it. Just consider, is their anonymous complaint legitimate or not? If it's not, ignore it. But the question is it true? Care about the substance, not about the emotion. And when people see that you have humility, that you're willing to own your mistakes, that you want to grow from them, you're not just venting, you're not defensive, you're not going around with a chip on your shoulder because somebody thinks you're less than perfect. You admit you're less than perfect. You ask for their prayers and support, encouragement. You ask them to pray for you to be the pastor God wants you to be and that they need you to be. And people respond well over the course of years to that kind of humility. And humility is such a key aspect of not only the Christian life, but any godly pastor. We need to show it. So when you disappoint them, if you need to own it, own it. If you need to ask forgiveness, do so. They'll see that you're serious about serving the Lord, and that'll help you pastor well.